Hello, everybody, and happy Friday. My name's Lacey, and I'm the EVP of Search Laboratory US. I'd like to welcome you guys to today's webinar, which is hosted by Search Laboratory and Optimizely on leveraging optimization and experimentation to drive growth. We'll start with just a little bit of some housekeeping. The webinar should last about 30 to 45 minutes. If you have any questions as we go through, just go ahead and drop them in the chat box. If we have time at the end, be happy to answer some of those. Very briefly, for you guys who aren't familiar with Search Laboratory, we're an integrated digital marketing agency. We have about 150 people between the US and the UK, and I guess in practical terms, we drive profitable growth for our clients through a range of digital marketing technology and data solutions. We are driven by evidence, led by transparency. We search for truth and data that helps our clients grow and achieve their business goals. Again, won't spend too long on this, but here is a quick visualization representing the services that we offer across the key areas, which is performance marketing, growth strategy, data science, and global reach. And here are just some of the clients that we work with. We obviously have a very long list of clients across B2B and B2C companies, and so we are probably pretty familiar with some of the challenges you might be seeing currently. And we have some tools for available to you for through digital and data solutions to address some of those challenges for you guys. For today, we have a few speakers. Again, already introduced myself, and my role today is really just to introduce the session and pass it over to the experts. And for today, we have Hans Hugenbaum, who is head of CRO in Search Laboratory, and then Simon Chapman, Director of Partner Enablement and Solution Architecture at Optimizely. So I will go ahead and pass over to Hans to kick us off. So let's do it.
Thanks, Lacey, and thank you all for joining us. I hope you will find this all very insightful. Today's session will be about all things CRO, optimization, experimentation, and after the session, I hope you understand a bit more about experimentation mindset and the benefits. We went too far. The experimentation mindset and the benefits of it. What good experimentation looks like. Building and fostering a culture of experimentation. And lastly, we want to share some case study on experimentation success. We'll be covering fairly advanced topics, but hopefully very interesting themes in there. Hope it's useful to people at different maturity levels when it comes to experimentation, from businesses who are looking to kickstart their experimentation to take it a bit more serious, to teams who have come a long way and are looking for the next steps of broadening their horizon. The first thing that I want to discuss is experimentation and why experimentation is probably the most vital thing you can add to your to-do list for 2024. As we're all getting ready to start 2024 with new and innovative ideas to boost our performance and improve our practices, experimentation is often overlooked as a core strategy. I might be a little bit biased, but to me, it sounds like a no-brainer, as it is a strategy that can enable sustainable growth. Imagine you could increase your revenue or performance without investing more into acquisition. The issue with acquisitional channels is that as soon as you stop investing in them, they will stop driving performance. For example, if you turn your Google ads off, B2C traffic will stop. CRO and experimentation helps to get more out of all your existing channels. As a very simple example, if your site has 1 million sessions per month at a 3% conversion rate, you're likely to see 30,000 conversions per month. At an average order value of $100, this would leave you with $3 million per month. Now imagine putting experimentation in place and optimizing your user experience and user journey and personalizing relevant experiences. Now your site could start to convert at 3.3%. And you might think that 0.3% higher doesn't make that big of a difference. But this increase would mean $300,000 in additional revenue per month without investing anything or any additional budget in acquisitional channels. And this would be relevant this month, next month, and any of the months after that, because we've achieved sustainable growth. However, solely focusing on conversion rate would create a bit of a tunnel vision. Focusing on average order value is another tactic that we can employ in experimentation. Even if the conversion rate stays the same and we can increase the average order value from 100 to 110, we would achieve very similar impacts. Good experimentation pulls the right levers at the right time to create sustainable performance increases. On top of that, the nature of experimentation is iterative, meaning we will keep focusing on further and better improvements and innovations. For example, that 3.3% conversion rate could become 3.4, 3.5, or even higher than that. It's not uncommon to see 20 to 30% improvements in conversion rate over time through good experimentation. Experimentation, in my view, is quite often misunderstood and considered to be difficult to get started with. So what is experimentation from a practical point of view? First off, it's the one that probably everyone is aware of with CRO, is the running of tests and experiments. The practice of running experiments in aid of discovering, learning, improving, and optimizing for a range of different outcomes, such as performance and audience insights. It allows us to validate and understand the impact changes have to our performance with minimal risk, because we can always roll back because it's just a test. It also allows us to drive real innovation by uncovering what really matters to our customers, testing solutions before heavy investments. Running experiments to support larger development and innovative ideas helps us understand the impact a large change could have, all within the safe boundaries of experimentation, and allow for bolder initiatives due to the reduced risk. And experimentation is a mindset. Constant experimentation is a way to identify what will have a desired outcome, iterate on success to grow further, and discard what doesn't work. And we can apply this to many facets of our business. Imagine how much time and money we could save if we didn't just launch new things into the world without testing them. That could end up causing problems. How much further your business could grow if we weren't held back by insecurity or risk. An experimentation mindset or culture of experimentation can help with that. As I alluded to previously, the user has a very central place in experimentation. Ultimately, the user needs to decide whether your product is right for them, whether they trust you, whether they are convinced that they need your product, and whether their experience was good enough for repeat customer. Good experimentation combined with CRO looks at creating unique, relevant, intuitive, and persuasive experiences. To do experimentation effectively, you need to understand your audiences through and through. But the good thing about experimentation is that it can also help you understand your audiences better and better over time. You can broaden your audience understanding, and with that, the strength of your experimentation, by understanding your audience decision making. How do they make a decision to buy a similar product to yours? How much of their journey and the decision making is done on or off site? And is the right information available on your site based on all of this? Understanding your audience's needs. What makes them different? Do your USPs and KSPs relate to the audience? And do you truly understand the needs of your audience? You can look at the whole user journey. Do you know your full user journey from on or off site, on site, and how people behave and what information they need? Is the journey optimized for information and persuasion? And is the route to success clear to them? And understand the experience your business offers from a user's perspective. Does the experience match the expectations? Is the experience easy to follow? And is the experience making a good case for persuasion based on the things that you know about your audience? And from a user's perspective, the experience is becoming more and more important. 80% of a user's brand interactions are digital in nature now. 84% of users expect a personal experience. They don't want to be treated as a number anymore, so make sure to make it relevant. And 86% of users say they will go elsewhere after only 2 poor experiences. The pressure to offer great experiences and relevant experience have never been higher to keep up with customer demands. And you can be sure that if you don't offer it to your users, then your competition is looking to do that. We embody experimentation through our Zero services. The foundation of our Zero practices is user-first experimentation. We focus on the user's needs, the jobs that need to be solved, focus on what matters to our users and how we persuade them to take desired action. We do this through thorough research and always come back to checking whether we truly understand the audience. Focusing on the user leads to better hypotheses to run for tests. From this, we run tests like A/B tests or multivariate tests that can prove the value of the hypothesis through robust data. A/B testing is probably the most well-known tactic in Zero, but it's only a part of the whole experimentation puzzle. Research shows that doing experimentation in the right way can have quite a significant impact on your performance and digital revenue, with 3 in 4 businesses seeing over 5% increase in digital revenue through good experimentation. But experimentation isn't really a channel on its own like search or paid or social. It's a long-term strategy to create a culture and practices to quantify changes we're making to avoid unintended negative impacts, to challenge our own ways of working, challenge what the business knows about its users, and leverage the power of iterative testing. This makes experimentation extension to every channel. It allows you to give users better experiences and more relevant landing experiences, for example, for paid traffic, better browsing experiences, and therefore better user experience, which is important to Google, and it adds persuasion to each channel. Experimentation, like Zero, sits on top of the site's experience and influences how users behave after the acquisition, similar to UX and user research, which are also key parts of experimentation. So what does good experimentation look like? Experimentation has been around for a while in business and digital and has grown quite significantly over the last few years. A few brands, for example, Google, Amazon, and Netflix, have been at the forefront of experimentation and mention experimentation as key factors in their success. But also brands like Booking.com, Sky, Microsoft, and Spotify are leaders in this space, just to name a few examples. These brands, they live and breathe experimentation. They challenge themselves constantly and will never be satisfied with okay performance. Almost every aspect of their user experiences will be tested and optimized continuously to find the best overall experience, personalized personalized experiences, and uncover new user trends and needs, all in aid to continuously and sustainably increase their performance. So what do these businesses know that no one else appears to know? What is their secret? Well, in fact, this is not really a secret. In fact, these brands are really open about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why. Booking.com has an engineering blog, a Medium, where they share advanced techniques. Lucas Vermeer, who was a key member to building their experimentation team, has many posts on their culture internally. He's currently recreating Booking.com success at Vista. Netflix also constantly shares their insight and techniques online on the Netflix tech blog. Is really worth a read. They have fantastic articles on there. They have posts on basic A/B testing and the culture of learning they've created. And they recently, 8th of November, highlighted their next steps in personalization. They don't make a secret out of it, as many others will try and tell you. Sky is a very active and present in the experimentation world. They present their workings and insights constantly online and even do webinars together with their friends at Optimizely. Google even built an A/B testing tool to enable brands to experiment more and better. Unfortunately, the product was discontinued in September of this year, but they really enabled a lot of brands just to start on the experimentation journey. And Jeff Bezos is a very big advocate of experimentation, on and offline. He believes that if you double the number of experiments you do per year, you're going to double your inventiveness. and that their success is a function of how many experiments they do per year, per month, per week, and per day. So what makes these brands, what do these brands have in place that makes them so good at experimentation? So first off, it's the right structure and processes. They also have the right people in the right place. They make themselves internally approachable and create a sharing culture. They are curious by default. Everything can be challenged. They have the ability to change, which is very important. They have a top-down approach to enable change based on data. The willingness to be proven wrong. They challenge their assumption and sometimes prefer losing tests to winning, as it will teach them more about the audience. And they communicate clearly and honestly. They don't make results look better than they are and accept that some tests will just miss the mark. Experimentation doesn't just drive on-site performance change. It can have a far broader impact to the business, from increased page views to time on site to launching more features and increased rates funding. The launched features one is very interesting in my opinion, as it shows a willingness to think creatively, run with an idea and test if it works, where businesses without experimentation often find new features too risky, as they need to go all in from the start and need to invest every resource to get this off the ground. So what does a culture of experimentation look like then? First thing to mention is that getting to a culture of experimentation is a journey. No one can start from the top. It's difficult to get everything in place quickly, and cultural changes within the business is even more difficult. It needs to be fostered, built from the ground up, and it takes time. Seeing it as a progression in maturity and making sure that you do the foundations right is a very good start. Getting senior stakeholders on board is an even better start. This will enable you to do more elaborate experimentation, better research, and provide better user experiences. My slides just stopped. Oh, that was very strange. Sorry about that. So most businesses start with a bottom-up experimentation approach. The team working bottom up, often in isolation, has quite an uphill battle in persuading their managers to buy in and provide budget. There will be little support, cross-departmental resources, or any priority to their work. They will spend most of the time on communicating upwards and working in a silo. A good culture of experimentation, experimentation comes from the top down. In this culture, everyone is enabled to experiment, take calculated risk through experimentation, and optimize their own work. Well, this is ideal. Making sure the top is on board with and understands experimentation is a very good start. In this structure, resources are shared for experimentation. Growth comes from multiple angles and collaboration is increased. Working top down enables every team to be curious and bold. To get started with all of this, there are three main areas to focus on, which are structure and practices, communication and inclusion, and focusing on making a difference. So structure and practices require a good foundation to be stable, and stability is key to continuous growth. First off, make sure you focus on your focus is user first. Your research and practices should be geared towards understanding the user and their needs. Examples of practices to put in place here are usability testing, user journey mapping, empathy mapping, all those kind of research methods. The jobs to be done framework is a great way to categorize your audiences and what their needs are, as it looks more at what a user wants to do rather than who they are. Secondly, the right tool for the right insights. In a tool stack, I would consider A/B testing tools, personalization tools, user research tools, data analysis tools, all those kind of good tools that make your life easier and more effective. However, the most expensive tool isn't by default the best and the right tool for you. Tools should be geared towards what you want and what you need to know and where you are in your maturity. What you should consider and focus on is making sure you have the right tools that give you the best insights, enable you to do more, able to do better and quicker, and very importantly, scale with you. What I've seen happen time and again is that businesses adopt a simpler and sometimes cheaper tool and later run into issues that the tool doesn't scale with them. It doesn't do what they need to do, or it even becomes a blocker. Often the cost of switching and adopting new tools can be quite high. As an example, many businesses really struggle to make a use case to come off Google Optimize, as it was free initially, but they outgrew it or they had to replace it. And the cost of a new tool, switching everything over and adopting new tech became quite a difficult sell into stakeholders. So cheap isn't always the right route. Lastly, do experimentation right all the time. This comes down to best practices like hypothesis-based testing, experimentation prioritization, so leaving your or your stakeholders' opinions at the door, unbiased data analysis, as it's so easy to read data with a lens that you want, and then interpreting the data wrong, possibly damaging performance. Clear communication around the team and the business, and honesty. As mentioned before, honesty is vital. Not being honest about your results can also damage performance greatly. The second area to focus on is inclusion and communication. As mentioned, experimentation is not its own channel, and therefore it shouldn't behave as such. It's a multidisciplinary strategy that benefits immensely from inclusion from around the business. For example, look at insights from across the business and other teams. Customer service teams often know everything, what users need and what frustrates them. Run team sessions to uncover insights from other teams, what they're working on, and where they might benefit from testing. Clear instructions on how teams can approach you, how to share insights with you, and whether there is a Teams or Slack channel available. Centralized communication to the business is also quite important. Everyone should be able to know what your team is up to, what is going on, and what you have achieved. This should be outward focused and in an easy to digest format. And lastly, in the inclusion part is to be approachable. Sometimes someone has an insight that might be incomplete, contains some subjectiveness, or they feel unsure about it. Make sure they feel comfortable to share this, as there's always an angle to any insight. Any piece of information is important and has merit. From a communication perspective, the following areas wants to be considered. For example, run training sessions and share examples. The more people who understand what you do or how they all fit into this, the better the program and the culture becomes. Share what you're working on. For example, we are focusing on X campaign, or we're exploring Y new feature before fully building it. Share what you have achieved and how. Nothing is more motivating than success. And if you can inspire others to see success, then more people will get involved. Share the achievements made with insights from other teams. For example, the customer service team shared X insight, which allowed us to run test Y with result Z. I bet more teams will be handing in insights when you do this. And lastly, and one of the most important principles is to celebrate failures. This may sound a bit backward, but experimentation is one of the best things you can adopt. You often learn more about losing tests than winning. Don't hide it, as realistically, you don't win every test. And if teams might get very discouraged, if their idea wasn't a winner, but your perception within the business is that you basically always win. Failure is feedback that you might need to revisit research, or that your hypothesis didn't target something the users really cared about. The last area to focus on is all about focusing on making a difference, choosing the right metrics to focus on, and it may not always be e-commerce conversion rate. For this, I want to hand over to Simon from Optimizely, who will share his thoughts on this.
Thank you, Hans. So in terms of the next piece, if you're not familiar with Optimizely, we are an enterprise-grade market-leading platform for experimentation, but also much more widely for driving consistent and exceptional digital experiences. And so from our platform, we've powered over 2 million experiments. Now, that's a huge number, and it's for working with partners, obviously like Search Laboratory, but also driving success for customers. And so part of that equation is often asked to me is, where do we start? And so as you can see from here, there's a bunch of different things that you tactically may already be doing, but want to do. And so to test or not to test, that is the question. And so it could be that you're testing for geographical differences, geolocation, targeting a wide variety of different markets, but needing to deviate from how you want to talk to those markets. And so how do you know unless you test, unless you experiment? But it's not just about refining the message for individual markets. It's also maybe about removing distractions from how people make purchases, understanding which messaging would work best, or even just simply put, optimizing forms. One of the best use cases I have for a B2B client was about getting people to drive conversions through submitting a form based on asking the right questions. And so it can be as simple as removing questions, refining them, or indeed optimizing the form in general so it performs much better than before. Not all tests are made equal, as Hans has very kindly said already. And so it's simply put that you want to make it so that you can refine for the things that matter best to you. And it's not just about the fact that you are targeting based on conversion rates. It can be many other factors. Now, of course, it goes without saying what not to test for. Please don't test for parts of your site or your different channels that have low traffic. It's difficult to form an opinion. Secondly, changes that are too small to matter because no one cares. And indeed, no one would even notice that difference if you're just changing a simple word or something on what may be a very busy site, for example. It needs to be something that can be measured and something that isn't left to being just noise and it would have happened anyway. But finally, make sure that those ideas aren't too far removed from your core goals. So make it so that the things you're testing for are things you can actually evidence, things you can prove, and ultimately things that match with your individual KPIs. Now, next, in terms of how we talk about this, of course, it goes without saying you want to base this on good quality data. Now, becoming data-driven means that you can benefit from all of that data that maybe you already have. And so you can use this as the basis to drive that kind of impact that you most expect. And so I've taken 2 examples of where you can benefit from actually enriching or enhancing some of that audience driving and audience definition. Now, first up is analytics, where by virtue of having analytics and heat maps and good data, it means that you can work out which audience is the target, which experiments were successful, and indeed understand user behavior. Now, that's hugely important because any experimentation solution on its own obviously will be brilliant, but it's even better when it's powered by data, even better when you can analyze that. And so to that end as well, integrating with CDPs, you see the huge impact it has in terms of taking that quality data that you already have access to and using it to enrich the audiences that Hans has already talked about. And so supporting those research groups, those workshops to understand which audiences should we target, which workshops should we run to identify the kinds of people we want to target. Now, this is based on the fact that we have a benchmark that we run regularly, as you can see, 103,000 tests from 1,100 companies. We've ran this for a long time. So we have the evidence within our benchmark to quantify the impact of using analytics, but also using CDPs. And so if we look at it a step further, that's all great. But it's not just about running a test. It's also about driving business growth. So with the data at hand that you have, with the ability to understand which particular elements of a site or an experience to optimize, how should I measure success? But ultimately, you can break this down into 2 distinct pillars. On the right-hand side, what's the value of experimentation to my business? And some of the classic measurements that you will already expect, so average order value, conversion rates, revenue per visitor, they're all pretty standard stuff. But it might also be that you want to improve reach, the ability to get people to download your app, or to get them to stay on the website or stay on the experience, to generate leads, or even if it means that they spend more time on particular assets that you would like them to do. that can increase ambassadorship or anything else that you would like them to have, and maybe improve how people perceive your brand. Simply put, the value piece is hugely important. But as Hans has already said already, you can combine this with how we drive a culture of experimentation. And so, whether it's the fact that we want to understand how many experiments should we run? Should we run these experiments at a certain cadence or velocity? And how many people should actually be involved in the process in general? Fostering a culture of experimentation means that everyone is at the table. Everyone can be involved in the idea definition to drive success, and everyone can turn those opinions into hypothesis, which in turn will turn into evidenced metric-based experiments. And so use this as a guide. It's not exhaustive, obviously. There are many more types of metric that you can have, but this gives you a good idea of the typical metrics that we see from a day-to-day perspective. Now, not all metrics, of course, are made equal. And so if I build this slide just for a second, you might be thinking, well, these are typical metrics that I would see day to day: revenue per visitor, search rate, add to cart rate, etc. But your common sense will drive you towards where you think, well, actually, the ones I focus on probably are at the top of this particular tree. And you'll probably be right. In fact, if I look at where do we focus in terms of our benchmark, you'll see that organizations that we work with actually do indeed focus heavily on the revenue per visitor. But as you can see, poor search rate at the bottom, that gets no attention or love at all. Now, should that be the case, you ask? Well, in this case, I'm about to contradict in terms of what you may think about where the effort should go, because revenue per visitor gets all the airtime, but actually the impact doesn't actually follow fully as you would expect. Now, if I build this out in each by piece, you will see that the actual effort versus the overall gain and the impact means that we have much more from doing work with the search rate, much more in terms of working on registration processes, and as you can see, from add to cart. If people can find the product or service, the chances are they will have more of a chance to getting to the end. So if you optimize and experiment for how the search works, how people can quickly add it to the basket or the cart, and how people can sign up, then you can drive their behavior to do whatever the next thing might be. And so experiments that I advocate for and I see routinely are these kinds of experiments where organizations want to improve. How can I get people to have curiosity during the buying process, or the curiosity of seeing the product or service that you have? Without that curiosity, they're never going to get to the revenue per visitor at all. Now, of course, a step further from this, and we touched on this earlier, is the power of personalization and what effect it has on those metrics. Now, simply put, if we're looking to then, let's just say, look at personalization and how this will impact and drive the overall behavior, this again was sourced from our benchmark, and so based on real experiments that we have indeed executed and worked with clients. It means that you can see the win rate will actually improve based on targeting or personalizing. The uplift will be much higher in terms of actually how we then choose to see, well, in this case, 22% in terms of uplift. But the overall impact, as you see, is huge. So a 41% impact by virtue of personalizing towards the audience that you're targeting with the right experiment. Now, personalization can come in very many flavors. It can be that you're cross-promoting. I know you have this, so therefore you need this. It could be that you know someone's behavior has done a particular thing before and they're returning back to your site or back to your app, and you want to personalize based on a previous experience. The point is to personalize so that that person believes and sees that they're the only person in the room, and they can then be targeted with the right content. Now, as you said before, it isn't just the fact that organizations are doing this who aren't known, let's say. These are obviously the market leaders, as we already know, the Amazons, the Googles, the Netflixes, the Booking.coms of this world. But the key thing I want to stress to you is that obviously you can start small, scale up, but you can do this at scale. And by working together with Search Laboratory and with Optimizely, it means that you can drive genuine experimentation success. It means that you can deliver those experiments with confidence, knowing that you can gain genuine insight into what your customers are doing, and indeed benefit from the wisdom that these organizations have already done this many, many times before. Now, to that end, I've got two different case studies I want to talk to you about. Both are different in terms of what they're doing. The first up is KLM, the well-known, well-regarded airline. And they chose web experimentation, one of our products for personalizing web experiences, to allow them to build, and I love this phrase, the minimal lovable products. And what it means is they can get started and get testing very, very quickly. And when they came to us, they wanted to just do more tests, building that culture of experimentation. And so it means that they can spend less time setting up, executing tests. They can just iterate much, much faster. And so by doing this, they can get, as you can see, more teams involved, many more tests running, and they can then get an opinion much, much quicker. But it's also about organizations like Blue Apron. Now, they've used us to, in this case, do all of their shipping, all of their boxes they send out. They wanted to increase the number of experiments that they run and to get every product team consistently involved in the experimentation process. But one of their key metrics, as you can see, was to decrease the number of issues relating to unexpected customer orders. Now, of course, they had a hunch on this. They had a hypothesis that they wanted to make sure that people should be notified beforehand so they wouldn't get that unexpected customer issues being raised. So by simply notifying people, giving them alerts and other things through experimentation, it means that they can result in much higher customer retention because people know what is happening and indeed can respond accordingly.
Thank you, Simon. As we're looking to wrap this up, I just wanted to share some key takeaways that I hope you've been able to take away from this. And as experimentation can help create sustainable growth for you in 2024. Audience first focus is key to experimentation and optimization. A culture of experimentation is beneficial across the business, not just the individual teams. And experimentation is more than just conversion rates. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and ask Lacey whether we've had any questions come in.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys both for going through all of that. One question that we've had come through is, how do I get wider business stakeholders more engaged with the experimentation?
Very good question. So what we see very often happen is that teams struggle to make that business case. One thing that I have found, one example that I found quite effective is the missing out approach. It's not just a case of if we do X, we get Y, but what is the risk of not doing it? What is the risk of falling behind on our competition? What is the risk to our performance by not optimizing it? Will users stick around? And what is the risk of not investing in understanding our audiences better? And with that, investing into data, investing into the business as a whole. So sometimes the reverse can be quite efficient, and sometimes it's as easy as just writing down on a PowerPoint slide, if we take 5% of our paid media budget and invest in experimentation, this is what we could achieve if we get a 2 or 3% increase in conversion rate. And very often that 2 or 3% conversion rate is more than you've taken away from that paid media budget. So sometimes it's as simple as writing it down, what will it return? And sometimes it's the missing out kind of factor.
Perfect.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or?
Sure, just to say, obviously it's combined with the right metrics. I think the key factor, and I went through this, is the fact that you need to match this to the metrics that people care about. And so the thing is, with those metrics, everyone's got to be involved, and everyone has to have, I'd say, the ability to demonstrate, to your point, around the fact that they are the right metrics to test for and evaluate, so that then you can prove the investment that needs to be made. So if you're proving for something that no one cares about, then no one will care about it. So therefore, it has to be something which you not only can evidence, but also, as you say, is a metric that's based on something which you can genuinely improve and that people are genuinely invested in. So that's the reason we have that slide from earlier around good quality metrics.
Great. Great. Well, looks like that's it for today. Again, thank you guys so much, and thank you everybody that joined us this Friday afternoon-ish, and hope you guys have a good weekend. As always, if you need to find out more information about this, you can check out our website, contact us. You see the email address below. So thank you guys so much and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.